Once upon a time, on the edge of a great forest, there lived a poor woodcutter with his wife and 2 children, a boy named Hansel and a girl named Gretel. The family had so little to eat that some nights they went to bed with empty stomachs, and the children learned to be quiet when the adults whispered, because whispers usually meant trouble. One winter evening, when the wind rattled the shutters and the last loaf of bread lay small on the table, the woodcutter sat with his head in his hands. His wife spoke sharply. "We cannot go on like this," she said. "Tomorrow, we must take the children into the forest and leave them there. We will give them each a piece of bread. Then we will go deeper among the trees, and they will not find their way back. If we do not do this, all 4 of us will starve." The woodcutter's face went white. "No," he said. "I cannot abandon my children. But what choice do we have?" The wife insisted. "If we keep them here, we will all die. If we leave them, at least we might live." The woodcutter argued until his voice broke, but his wife's fear and hardness were stronger. At last, worn down by hunger and despair, he agreed, though his heart felt as if it were splitting. In the corner, behind the half-open door, Hansel and Gretel had been listening. Gretel began to cry quietly, but Hansel put his finger to his lips. "Don't be afraid," he whispered. "I will find a way." When the adults finally fell asleep, Hansel slipped out of bed and crept outside. The moon was bright, turning the snow pale as milk. Hansel filled his pockets with small white pebbles that glittered on the ground like tiny stars. Then he returned to the cottage, and the children lay still until morning. At dawn, their stepmother woke them early. "Get up," she said. "You're coming with us into the forest to gather wood." She gave each child a small piece of bread. Hansel saved his and did not eat it. The woodcutter took his axe, and together they walked into the forest. As they went, Hansel let one pebble fall every few steps, unnoticed, so that a trail of white stones marked their path. They walked farther than they ever had before. The trees grew thick, and the forest seemed to swallow sound. At last the stepmother stopped. "Stay here," she told the children. "We will go cut wood nearby. When we are done, we will come back for you." The woodcutter could not meet their eyes. He turned away and followed his wife deeper into the trees. Soon the sound of chopping began, then stopped. But the chopping was a trick. The stepmother had tied a branch to a dead tree so that the wind would make it knock again and again, like an axe striking wood. Hansel and Gretel waited, thinking their father was close. Hours passed. The forest grew quiet. Evening came, then night. The children huddled together, cold and frightened, and the knocking sound faded until it was gone. When the moon rose, Hansel said, "Now we can go home." He took Gretel's hand, and they followed the line of pebbles shining in the moonlight. The stones led them safely through the forest, and by morning they reached their cottage. The woodcutter was overjoyed when he saw them. He hugged them hard, and tears ran down his face. Slowly lose its leaves. Even the stepmother pretended surprise, though her eyes stayed sharp. For a few days the family managed as best they could, but hunger returned. Soon there was even less food than before. One night Hansel heard the stepmother whisper again. "Tomorrow we will do it a second time," she said. This time they must not come back. Hansel tried to slip outside for pebbles again, but the door was locked. He went back to bed with a tight, worried mind. If he could not use stones, he would use something else. In the morning, the stepmother handed the children bread again, smaller pieces than before. As they walked into the forest, Hansel crumbled his bread and dropped the crumbs along the path to make a trail. Once more they were led deep among the trees. Once more the stepmother told them to wait. Once more the woodcutter walked away with a face full of misery, and the stepmother did not look back. Hansel and Gretel waited until night, then stood and tried to follow the trail of crumbs home. But the crumbs were gone. Birds had found them and eaten every last one. Hansel's stomach sank. Gretel began to sob. Still, Hansel took her hand and said, "We will keep walking. We must find a way out." They wandered for hours. They slept under trees, woke, and wandered again. The forest seemed endless, green above, dark below, and full of strange sounds. They grew weaker and weaker, and their fear became a dull ache that lived in their throats. On the third day, exhausted and trembling, they came upon a clearing. And there, to their amazement, stood a little house. But it was not made of wood or stone. It was made of bread and cake, with a roof of sweet pastry, and windows of clear sugar that shone like glass. The smell was warm and delicious, drifting into the air like a promise. Gretel stared. Is it real? Hansel stepped closer. He broke off a small piece of wall and tasted it. His eyes widened. "It's real," he whispered. "It's food." They forgot caution. They began to eat. Hansel pulling pieces of bread from the wall, Gretel nibbling sweet sugar from the window. While they ate, a thin voice called from inside the house, singing softly, "Nibble, nibble, little mouse. Who is nibbling at my house?" Hansel froze. Gretel clutched his sleeve. Trying to sound innocent, Hansel called back, "It's only the wind blowing from the sky!" The door creaked open, and an old woman stepped out. She leaned on a crooked stick. Her hair was white and tangled, and her eyes were sharp as needles. Yet her voice sounded sweet. "Oh, you poor children," she cooed. "You must be terribly hungry. Come inside. I have plenty to eat. You may rest and be safe." Hansel and Gretel looked at each other. The old woman smiled warmly, and hunger made them brave. They followed her in. Inside, the house was even more tempting, a table covered with milk, pancakes, roasted nuts, and sweet fruit. The children ate until they could hardly breathe. Then the old woman clapped her hands kindly. "Now," she said, "you can sleep in soft beds." Gretel lay down at once and fell asleep, full and exhausted. Hansel, too, began to drift, until he noticed how the old woman's eyes lingered on them, not with kindness, but with calculation. The next morning the truth became clear. Hansel woke to find himself inside a cage, like an animal. He grabbed the bars and shouted. The old woman only laughed. "You will be fattened up," she said, "and then I will eat you." Gretel cried out, but the old woman seized her by the arm and pushed her to work. "Bring water," she ordered. "Stir the pot, sweep the floor, and feed your brother. He must grow plump." Gretel trembled with fear, but she did what she was told. The old woman was a witch who had built her sweet house to lure children, and now she meant to keep them. Each day the witch brought food to Hansel and said, "Stick out your finger. Let me feel if you are fat yet." Hansel was clever. He knew the witch's eyes were weak. He stuck out a small bone he found on the floor instead of his finger. The witch felt it and snarled, "Still too thin! Eat more!" So days passed, and the witch grew impatient. At last she said, "Thin or fat, I'm tired of waiting. Tomorrow I will cook you." That night Gretel whispered to Hansel, her face wet with tears, "What will we do?" The Hansel's voice was low but steady. "Watch carefully," he whispered. "When the moment comes, be brave." In the morning, the witch lit a great fire in the oven. The heat filled the kitchen. She muttered to herself and stirred her pot, licking her lips. Then she grabbed Gretel and said, "Look inside the oven. See if it's hot enough." Gretel understood at once. The witch wanted to push her in too. Gretel swallowed her fear and said softly, "I don't understand. I'm not sure how to do it." The witch snapped, "Stupid girl!" and leaned forward herself to peer into the oven. In that instant, Gretel used all her strength. She pushed the witch hard. The witch stumbled forward, and Gretel slammed the oven door shut and fastened it. The witch screamed and pounded from inside, but the fire roared, and the terrible sound faded. Gretel stood shaking, hardly believing she was still alive. Then she ran to Hansel. "It's over," she cried, and her hands worked at the cage latch until it opened. Hansel burst out, and the children hugged each other so tightly it hurt. They knew they could not stay. They searched the house quickly and found the witch's treasure: chests of pearls, gold coins, and bright jewels. Hansel and Gretel filled their pockets with as much as they could carry. Then they ran. They ran through the forest, not stopping until their lungs burned. At last they reached a wide river. For a moment they feared they were trapped again. But a white duck swam near, and Gretel called gently, "Dear duck, please help us. We have no way across." The duck carried them, one at a time, across the river. First Hansel, then Gretel, so that neither would fall into the water. When they reached the other side, the forest seemed less dark, as if the river itself had been a boundary between danger and safety. They walked on, guided by instinct and hope, and after some time they recognized familiar trees and paths. At last they saw their own cottage. The woodcutter was outside, thin and tired, and when he saw the children he cried out and ran to them. He held them as if he would never let go. The children told him everything, and the woodcutter wept with both sorrow and relief. In many tellings, the stepmother was no longer there. Some say she had left. Others say she had died while the children were gone. However it happened, the cruelty that had driven the children into the forest was gone from the house. Hansel and Gretel poured out the treasure they had brought, and the little cottage suddenly held more wealth than it had ever seen. But even more important than the gold was this: the family no longer faced hunger, and the father would never again allow fear to make him betray his children. Hansel and Gretel stayed close to one another from that day forward, and they remembered the lesson the forest had taught them, that danger can wear a sweet smile, but courage and cleverness can bring you home. And so, at last, they lived in safety and never again went hungry.